I'm here with Natan Last, who contributes crossword puzzles to The New Yorker and The New York Times, among others. He's formerly director at the Asylum Seeker Advocacy Project. At one time, the youngest person to get a puzzle accepted into The New York Times, which is pretty impressive. And he's the author of Across the Universe, The Past, Present, and Future of the Crossword Puzzle. It's Natan Last. Natan, thank you so much for coming and hanging out with me on the show today.
Thanks for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
You have just come back from Crossword Con, which I've never been to. What was the vibe there? What would I have seen if I were there with you?
CrosswordCon is this awesome group of people that kind of showcase all the different ways crosswords tickle everyone's brain. So there's programmers showing the bespoke tools they've built to make puzzle making easier. I did a reading there of a more emotional section in the book, trying to talk about the ways that crosswords bring people together and even unite us in moments of grief. And there will be people there talking about crossword archive digitization, talking about the indie puzzle scene and the charity puzzle packs. It's just like a really great multi-layered cake cross section of the puzzle world. It's really wonderful.
How do crosswords bring us together in grief?
I have this chapter of the book about a pair of siblings whose mother, unfortunately, this is right at the start of COVID, was diagnosed with cancer, and they came back to New York where she was being treated. And even in the big hospital room that was in a new NYU unit, had a big TV, they plugged in their laptop and they did the Times puzzle every day. And a streak began, and the streak kind of held, or it seemed to hold, the possibility of her illness going away, the possibility of her life continuing. And it was just a way to mark the day, to collaborate, and for the mother who unfortunately passed to see her children doing something together and to help. Um,
Well, it's important to play together, isn't it? And this is one way for people to play.
Yeah, exactly. It's traditionally an isolated pursuit, but now puzzles have become, just like sharing our wordle grids, a very social thing.
That's a really good point. And the sociality of it, I mean, the digitization of crosswords makes it possible or easier to share. That's for sure. Because of something I read in your book, Across the Universe, I decided to try out a puzzle that you referenced. It was one by Matt Ginsberg. The title of it is Just Follow Directions, and it's from the 3rd of February, 2008. We'll have a link to it on the show notes for this episode. And I haven't experienced anything like that for quite a while. I have a habit of doing the mini in the New York Times with my young daughters, and they're just getting used to crosswords and they're getting a vocabulary.
Mhm.
It's a way for us to build vocabulary and a way for us to sort of work together to solve a problem, which is really cool. And it's cool that crosswords can do that. But this puzzle was just bananas. It's got words flying around everywhere. It's got ambiguous clues. It's got clever clues. The one that I think I noticed was punch. And I love clues like that because you don't know if you're talking about punching someone or punching a ticket, like with punching a hole in something, or whether you're talking about punch that you drink and it's 4 letters, 4 letters long. And I've got to sort through all that ambiguity. So writing an ambiguous clue, I think, is part of the fun. But
Mhm.
what else is fun about writing clues for you?
Yeah, clues are this wonderful free associative game. I mean, the novelist Georges Perec, who is a big language head and, of course, famously wrote a novel without the letter E in it, also wrote a weekly crossword for Le Font and called the filling of the grid this like letter-based arithmetic. It was like this tedious maniacal task where all that matters is that letter words are this or that length. But filling a grid was a stroll in the thousand and one associations a word can evoke. And writing a good crossword clue is like that. At first, just letting your mind go to where it wants to go when it comes to what's evoked by a given word. But writing a really good clue, so there's the cultural reference point. There's what does this make me think of? And that first instinct is often the truest clue you'll write. But there's also clever clues, and that is honestly, if you've ever played the game Codenames, where you're looking at a word and you just are thinking of all of these kind of abstract nouns and verbs that are associated with that word. So I was recently helping a friend write a clue for the word makeout session, right? That phrase.
Makeout session. Okay, cool.
And we wanted a clever question mark clue. And sometimes
A
this,
question mark. Hang on, for people not familiar with the syntax, that means it's a jokey answer. Is that right?
yeah, there's a pun involved, there's wordplay involved. And in this case, like many previous crosswords, I wanted to pun on the fact that making out is sometimes referred to as necking, right?
Mm,
And so I just thought of as many two-word phrases as I could that had the word neck in them, and eventually came up with neck stretch, which sounds like something your physical therapist recommends, but it's also a stretch of necking. Exactly. And that kind of free associative hopping is, I think, what makes for really good, clever clues. The question mark, as you're saying, is often a way of hand holding the solver just a little bit and saying there's stretchy wordplay involved herein. Be careful. But also,
mm,
you can, just like you're saying, use the bare syntax of crossword clues to hide proper nouns. So a clue might be something like law with many parts, which sounds like it's about some kind of ancient code of legal authority. But in fact, the answer is Jude, because Jude Law is an actor whose last name would be
and
capitalized at the beginning
parts.
of a clue in actors and
Wow.
parts. So it's that
Okay.
kind of yeah, it's that kind of groaners that really make us crossworders tick.
Wow. Okay. And the word neck, I don't know if anybody refers to kissing or making out as necking anymore. It's an old
No.
reference. And that was kind of an area I wanted to go to since we're talking about cluing. There are words that it's maybe time to retire, like Nick and Nora's dog, Asta, which who knows that anymore? That's a 100-year-old reference. You think maybe we better move on from that one. Are there any that you feel like it's time to retire, or was there a clanger that you recently saw that made you go, "Oh, that one has passed"?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot here. I think some of the like Hawaiian words for lava occasionally, or some of the place names are places that I hadn't heard of. I kind of think many things are true here at once. One is there's been a happy arms race to make crossword grids even cleaner, so even more devoid of this fusty crosswordese, as you're referring to it.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's stuff with the term of art. These are words that appear so much more in the crossword grid than in real life. And in fact, there was this cool analysis by software engineer Noah Veltman that I'd quickly shout out, which is about the crosswordiness of a word. So crosswordese might be words that like era, uh, ear, area appear in crosswords so often. But of course, those words appear in real life too. So
Yeah.
he kind of created this ratio that was how often does this word appear in the New York Times crossword grid against how often does it appear in the Google Books corpus, right? So
Cool.
words that are only in crosswords, and the crosswordiest words are words like Ursa. No one really calls the Big Dipper Ursa Major. And let's see what else. Smee, which is the
Oh,
captain, I believe,
Captain
from
Hook's first
yeah,
mate. I
that's
was
right.
thinking of like NNE for North Northeast, which I look at that and I
That's right.
just, oh my God.
That's right. And you're pointing to a really good thing, which is not only is it frustrating as a solver to put that in, but the frustration begins when you see yet another clue that's two cities that happen to be north northeast from each other in a pathway you'd never take as a traveler. And so it just feels so contrived. I would say those I definitely agree. I'd like to retire. I think that the there was this great project I talk about in my book called the Oreo Cluing Project, which recognized that Oreo, of course, is in every single crossword, and we can talk about, the phonotactic reasons for that. There's a good reason that Oreo is in every crossword grid. It's helpful. But also it's so hard to find a good and new and fresh Oreo clue. And so almost as a joke, this comedian and crossword writer, Ada Nicole, uh, enlisted some, 50 constructors to write dozens and dozens of new and, in many cases, cheeky clues for the word Oreo.
Okay.
So things like, edible tell in the movie Rounders because someone's playing poker, and when they reach for an Oreo, they have a good hand.
Nice.
Or apparently Ross and Rachel split an Oreo on the very first episode, the pilot of Friends. And so that's the way of trying, and who knows if successful, to breathe new life into some of these words that just because of their letter combinations are gonna keep coming up.
Well, now let me ask a question from our listener, James, because I put this out to our listeners. James has kind of a similar bent here. James says, how do you handle curating your lexicon of available words? Is it exciting when a new brand or new celebrity makes it possible to use a previously too obscure word as an answer? How do you balance the need to expand or diversify the kind of clues and answers that can appear in puzzles with a need to be familiar enough for enough people to solve a puzzle? I imagine you're just making guesses about, okay, what's my audience know? How far can I push this? What's their limit? How do I go a little bit beyond it so that it's not bleedingly obvious when you first
Hmm.
see the clue? Maybe I want it so that it's not obvious when you first see it, but once you get a couple of letters, then you go, oh, that's the sweet spot. That's what I'm looking for.
That's
How do you
exactly it.
manage your inventory?
Yeah, that's exactly it. So there's a couple of ways to do it. Almost all constructors have this text file called a word list. And this can be, I mean, this can be paper and pen and analog, but what it often is a file that's tens of thousands of rows of words. And then next to those words is a number that represents how highly ranked that given constructor wants it to be in their construction software. And all that means is if you're in a section and you need a 7-letter word that has an N in the third position, it'll show you regular words as well, but maybe higher up than that, you want to see, to James's point, Jin Urso, Felicity Jones's character in in Rogue One. I remember when that movie came out, everyone was like, crossword constructors are going ham. This is JYN as a first name,
Okay.
ERSO. And so that's just going to bail you out of a corner. And you have the might of Star Wars fandom behind you to say this is knowable. It's not inferable necessarily as a name, but so many people saw that movie, so many people know this now franchise character that that's helpful for us constructors next time we're faced with blank RS blank, let's say, or a 7-letter word that has an N in the third
Hmm.
slot.
Okay.
And so, yeah, we're always balancing that. You alluded to the crossings, right? So, one rule of thumb that I have is if I think a name is crossword worthy, I'm going to put it in. And the best thing I could do is make the crossings as easy as possible. So the down answers, let's say, that touch the across answer that I'm introducing, I can make those words standard vocabulary, and I can make the clues for those words as gentle as possible. Um, and I'd rather do that than ease a solver in. I want to clue the new name I'm introducing the way that I want. If it's something that's important to me, I kind of don't want to soft pedal in any way, but I can help in the crosses or in the crossings. I can help the solver see that the first letter is going to be a T, and if most words begin with consonants, maybe there's a vowel or a blend afterwards. Get them thinking about the logic of the grid, as opposed to shaming them for something they don't know. And the second thing I would do is if I believe in the name and I think it's a really interesting thing, ideally, even in the case in which the solver maybe didn't know the answer, maybe even didn't finish the puzzle, hopefully I've excited them into learning something that they didn't know, as opposed to kind of tut-tutted that they had a gap in their knowledge.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds like what you're saying is if I'm going to lay a tough one on them on the across, I better throw them a few bones on the downs so that the frustration doesn't get too much.
Yeah,
Wow.
exactly.
Okay. Aria Flame has asked, how iterative a process is this? Are themed ones more fun? They're kind of all themed now, aren't they?
Well, there's most of them are themed. There's kind of two big puzzle types. Themed puzzles, yeah, they have a connection. So the one that you were solving, Just Follow Directions, that was a tricky theme. It was
That
a
was a tricky
Sunday-sized
theme.
puzzle
Yep.
where you had to literally follow the directions like down and up and right that were in the grid. So upside down cakes, the down of upside down cakes was literally entered down in the grid, right? So the
Yeah.
it was kind of zigging and zagging all throughout the puzzle.
Yeah, I noticed there was popular song from The Wiz, and I realized it was Ease On Down the Road. So Ease On was there, and then the road turned the corner and went and went down. Wow, what a concept.
Yeah, that's a real fun one, and that's a really inventive and tricky theme. Most puzzles are themed. So in the times, for instance, Monday through Thursday are themed. Sunday is themed, just bigger. Friday
Hmm.
and Saturday are themeless, and so those are just kind of mixtapes. They're just collections of interesting words. They're harder. The clues can be trickier. The
Hmm.
culture can be more ranging. It's a very, very iterative process, and all three parts of that process are really, really, really disparate in terms of what they draw on. Um, so making a theme is like creating a scavenger hunt, and coming up with the good answers in the puzzle that you mentioned, going on down the road, upside down cakes. What is the right set? What's the right illustration of that theme? Should the word down be in it, or should down be the direction? How many theme answers do I want? If I have one musical song and one cake, what's like the rest of the set to make it feel like a full meal, so to speak? What feels
Hmm.
right? And getting that theme idea together, getting the list of answers chiseled down into a cool set, that's extremely iterative. And then placing the black squares and making the words fit is also extremely iterative. If making a theme feels like creating a scavenger hunt, and many crossword constructors who favor that part of the process will say that they are creators. Whereas people who are really, really, really grid freaks, they love the mathematics of the letter combos. They love making a grid with interesting words. In my experience, they tend to use the word constructor because it feels like building. Like much building, it's extremely iterative. You'll replace black squares, you'll take out words because the two crossings have led to an obscurity in the southeast corner of the grid. And then, of course, writing clues is writing. It feels like, making jokes. It feels like making cultural references. It feels like sometimes a little narrative when two clues refer back to each other, or a
Hmm.
clue six answers down has a callback to a clue six answers up. So it's extremely iterative, and I would say the first two in particular, nailing down that theme and getting the grid just right, take a long time.
I've written here in my notes, it seems like filling a grid with words is half the battle, but writing a good clue is the other 150%. Is that true? Do you think I got that about right? Did I get the proportions?
Yeah, I think that sounds right to me. I think in the book I make some joke that like writing clues is, half trivia night, two-thirds dad joke, right? Where it's like, that they all take really different parts of the brain. I think that filling a grid is interesting because it's become the part that's most amenable to computer assistance. And so in the old days, you'd have people tearing their hair out, scribbling on graph paper, and just getting frustrated. You used to have these door-stopping books called crossword puzzle dictionaries. And rather
Yeah.
than words, they had, the headings would be, okay, in this section, we're doing blank, 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 and blank, B, blank. And then the next session, we're doing blank, blank, and blank, blank, B, blank. And it was just a
Oh
list
my
of
gosh.
words
Oh my
that
gosh.
fit that letter pattern.
This was just begging for computers.
This part was, right? It is like, I have a six-letter word that ends in X. You and I will come up with some good ones, but I'd like to see the full list, right?
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
And so, yeah, I would say filling the grid has, maybe reduced to 40% of the battle, and writing the clues is now, I think, a bigger part of it. I also think you can kind of see a constructor's style and voice in the clues. And so a lot of the efforts to write interesting clues, to introduce new cultural references, to change the syntax of standard newspaper crossword clue writing, a lot
Hmm.
of that has happened in clue writing.
What you're saying now is kind of reminding me of a thread that I want to go to, and that is, whose knowledge is being represented. There's been a real effort, as you mentioned in the book, of trying to represent a kind of knowledge that isn't just white mainstream culture, but that touches on different ages and different ethnic groups and different cultural traditions. That sounds like that's a really important part of the consideration when you're choosing words and writing clues. Would that be right?
That's a huge part of it. Yeah, absolutely. And that's everything from excluding parts of language and culture that maybe just are just obviously seen as pejorative or derogatory in some way. So some of that's a low bar, not having slurs.
Yep.
Um, But everything all the way up to Idi Amin used to be a very common crossword answer because IDI and AMIN. Whether or not you want a kind of genocidal dictator in your puzzle is, of course, something we're freshly thinking about. Um, but even, I tell the story in the book about having a puzzle with Anwar in it, Anwar. And we had clued it when we submitted it. This was a collaboration. Like it's been clued every single time before as blank Sadat.
Sadat.
Um,
Yeah.
it's the Egyptian president. The times had changed the clue to blank al-Awlaki, terrorist killed in a U.S. drone strike. And not only is that just a little dark for my,
Holy crossword
yeah,
puzzle.
yeah, Saturday morning, I didn't know I was opening the paper to hear about that. In fact, I was opening the international news section to hear about that, and then the puzzle section explicitly to avoid that. Um, but also the way the clue was framed, this was a U.S. citizen. I'm not defending him in any way, but this was a U.S. citizen, so it's weird to call the drone strike American, but not the person.
Hmm.
Whether or not he was a terrorist was something the ACLU was debating in the courts, right? So wherever you fall on what was just a hot button issue that one didn't expect to be litigated in the arts section of the New York Times, it was a sort of extreme case that brought to bear just how political the puzzle kind of always is. It's always telling you the definitive way a thing is known, right?
Kind of. I just wanted to do a puzzle here, folks.
I just wanted to do a puzzle, and I wanted a little bit, if I could psychologize for a sec, to submit gently to the authority of whatever the puzzle knows and however the puzzle frames a thing.
Ooh.
Um, and I do think there we come to the puzzle to, learn about what we need to know. The constructor Laura Bronstein has a good line. A puzzle is kind of one collection of things one ought to know to go into the world. We solve the puzzle in the morning, and having done so, we feel that we can kind of take on the tasks of the day, right? And so,
Yeah.
yeah, there's a huge consideration to not cause harm, just as there's a huge consideration to expand, especially the linguistic base, introducing new slang, not sort of tarring that slang with too many qualifiers. So, not doing the kind of Steve Buscemi in 30 Rock, hello, fellow kids
Hmm.
vibe where, and cluing Riz as, charisma, comma, in modern slang, right? It's just like the word has become so wordified that
Yeah.
qualifying it in that way others it, right? It makes it seem a little squinty.
Suppose.
Yeah.
Still
And so, yeah,
hilarious.
it's absolutely so funny. But that's a big part of it is, introducing modern slang, introducing the constructor, uh, Erica Sungwocek had this thing called the expanded name database. And,
Mm.
by her lights, if crosswords are going to have IRA in the grid over and over again, because R is a consonant that can blend with lots of other consonants, and I and A are vowels, and vowel heavy words are very helpful. In a language where 80% of the words begin with consonants, you're going to need those vowel heavy release vowels underneath them. And so to her, why not have, Yaa Gyasi, the author, YAA, who's an award-winning author, Michaela Cole, COEL, right, an award-winning writer and director. These are people that are famous in their own right and mean a lot culturally to certain communities. And it's just a it's just a service, I think, to have those people in the puzzles. All the more so if you actually like them. I think one thing construction has become is a bit more, as I said, of a mixtape where it's a weird art form because you do need the other person to solve it, but also you like what you like, and putting that in the grid I think is often contagious. The grid can be a kind of recommendation letter for stuff you think is cool.
That's a good way of thinking about it. You teach classes in crossword construction. What's in the syllabus, if I may ask?
Yeah. um I teach kind of two sorts of classes. One is here's how you make a puzzle,
Mhm.
and that is a really really hands-on class, and it's divided only among the different uh, procedures in making a crossword grid. So, class one would be how do we think of a theme? And we taxonomize existing themes. Oh, here are the kinds of themes where you add a letter and make a kooky new phrase. Here's a theme where you've noticed that these three Dr. Seuss books are all 15 letters long, and that's all we're doing. We're just doing a Dr.
Hmm.
Seuss tribute puzzle.
Okay.
and then we brainstorm a theme set together. Parts two is I sometimes separate placing the black squares and filling the words, because putting the black squares in is such an important and kind of unsung aspect of building a grid.
I
Uh,
literally had not considered. I kind of thought that came for you. I thought that that was already done for you, and it's
yeah,
not.
yeah, yeah. You have to place every single black square, and you have to place them, you know, wisely if you can. Yeah, and everything from, okay, not a lot of words end in I, so let's not put a black square underneath an I, all the way up to, most words begin with consonants, so let's place black squares to the left and above consonants, stuff like that. So consonants can start words going across and start words going down. And then we'll have a whole class on filling the grid. And that's everything from the software that people use to make that a little easier, but also where do you start? What does it mean to have what does a good crossword grid feel like? Does it have a ranging set of answers? Does it have interesting vocabulary? Does it kind of do that crossword thing of combining high and low? Erudite reference and groaner pun. How do we do that?
Yeah.
And then we'll spend a whole class on writing clues. And again, that too is about being sneaky sometimes and hiding words using the linguistic pyrotechnics afforded us by clue syntax. And what do we want to reference? So when I teach this class with older folks as the students, it's often just a fun game of what is something that they know that I don't know, what is a reference that I have that they're interested in. They've turned me on to a lot of 1950s movies that I otherwise would maybe not have encountered, and I forced them all to watch the music video for Cisco's "The Thong Song" because we had that in a grid, and that's intergenerational, transmission.
I've got an idea. I would like you to test me on some clues that you think are cool, but cool in different ways. Like you mentioned that there are pretty straightforward ones, there are some obscure ones, there are some jokey ones. Would you please do a lightning round where you can just throw some at me that you think
Sure.
are representative of the art?
No, no problem. Here's one that I wrote from a while ago.
Okay. I'm gonna suck at
It's they might be put on a stretcher, and
they.
it's 9 letters long, and it's 2 words, four and then five.
They might be put on a stretcher. Okay, now there's a stretcher thing. That's where you carry off injured people, but I don't think that's where we're going here.
Mm-hmm.
What other kinds of stretchers are there? They're tall tales.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. I like
Because a
that.
tall tale is a stretcher. Did I get it? Did I get it?
You're right that stretcher is the word that's being punned on. It's not in that direction, but it's in another direction. So what is
Dang it.
another thing you might call a stretcher? Mm-hmm.
Nope, I ain't got it. I ain't got it.
A stretcher might be someone who stretches, and they might wear stretchy clothes to stretch. So the answer is yoga pants, which might be put on someone who's doing some stretches.
You know, I think if I'd gotten a few of the other letters, I might have had it. That's really
Exactly,
good.
yeah.
I love it. I love it.
This is
Oh
the
wow.
fun thing about clues is that, like, of course you would have had some of the crossings, and you would have been using both the part of your brain that's like, okay, what words fill this slot, and then also you would have been trying to decipher the pun, and so it's a good combo.
They are stretchers. Okay, give me another one. Give me another one. Now that you know my level, you've taken the measure of the man.
Here's one of my favorite sort of sing-songy ones: morsel a horse'll eat.
Morsel a horsel eat. And 4 letters, would it be oats?
Yeah, exactly. 3 letters for oat, singular. Exactly.
Oat.
Yeah, yeah,
Yay. That's cute. No, that's very
yeah.
nice. I like that. That feels good, and it's not
Hmm.
too tough.
Not too
I
tough.
feel like it makes me feel like you're clever, and that's what you're trying to do. So that's good. Okay,
Well done.
I'm fresh off of that success. Give me one more that you
Do you
think
want
is representative.
do you want a really tricky one or a really hard one or a really easy one? Those are the tricky or hard. Those
Uh,
are the two choices.
I think I'm feeling kind of Tuesday-ish. I'm not feeling Friday-ish.
How about article seen in many newspapers? 3 letters.
The article. Oh, okay. Well, now that you say article, I'm figuring article is the one that's getting punned on. So I think the article is going to be the.
Well done. There it is.
Thank you. I think I read that one in the book though, because you stuck it in the book and I read it there. So I might have cheated, but
That's
who
okay. That's
knows?
okay.
Maybe
Yeah,
I
we'll
didn't.
never know.
I'll never tell. Thank you. That's really cool. Can I go back to the theme of computers? Because you'd think that computers have kind of solved everything but the clue writing. I mean, it would
Hmm.
help you with placement and working out a nasty corner of the grid. But it's not as simple as that. I mean, these are tools, but they don't do it for you. Or have I got that wrong?
They don't do it for you. And I sort of think they won't anytime soon. A funny thing about crossword writing is that it almost feels to be like some of the aspects that we might think AI is useful for, we have kind of simpler tech tools for that are perfectly fine. So it's not a big value add at the moment. So for
As
instance,
with many AI things, actually.
it's overhyped a little bit, right? And I would say, as far as AI has gotten, when I look at the LLMs, and it's very fun to see them hallucinate, right? It feels like they're still not like us. I do think the hallucinations have
They're not.
decreased. They're not like us.
They're not like us.
Yeah, yeah. You and I are obviously real, as we all know. But it's definitely the case that AI has gotten better at hallucinations. Quite good at yet is semantic play. So, for instance, if I want to think of a theme, there was a theme that Patrick Barry, who's an amazing constructor, came up with, where he noticed that the word sore loser repeats every single letter except for the L. So there's two S's, there's two R's, there's two O's, there's two E's. L is the odd one out.
Interesting.
That's a fun thing to notice. It would be so hard to come up with other examples. That's not the kind of search a human brain is very good at. That sort of exhaustive, going through everything in an efficient way. It's really, really hard to come up with that. And he was struggling, and other constructors have come up with this kind of theme, struggling to come up with other examples. But that's a really easy Python script to work up or something.
Hmm. Yep.
And, just saying, search through this dictionary and unearth gems like Hippocratic Oath, in which every single letter except for R is repeated,
All right.
which is an amazing find. And I sort of think we'd never come up with that on our own. Not only that, but seeing the full sweep allowed him to, starting with that L of sore loser, take the extra letters and spell out leftovers, right? Which is
So
a really nice
good.
way
Oh,
to tie them together.
delicious.
Really, really fun. Really couldn't do that without writing a teeny tiny program to unearth these gems. Um, AI can help you do that a little faster if you're not a coder.
Hmm.
And so that's a
Hmm.
nice thing. But there's also just been this huge reaction to two parts of crossword construction. One is the way that the word list management is having this like big dictionary file that's got some words scored high and others demoted down low. Every now and then, newer constructors will kind of unplug and do the slow food version of construction, and they'll take out
Cool.
graph paper and try to fill a corner by themselves, just to remember that that's its own skill, and also to do something that feels a little active, because in extremis, the crossword construction software will say, you want a section of this grid filled? Yeah, one across is strong, two down will be opera, and we're done. And you don't want to do that. You want to fill the grid yourself and kind of pick every word. So there's a sense in which, with filling the grid, people have tried to beat back the machine assistance. That's also true for coming up with a fun theme. So, AI is quite good at letter-based search. um, it's pretty good at some phonological search. So the linguist Tom McCoy, who's also a constructor, a crossword constructor, used, I think it's the CMU phonological corpus, to come up with pairs like thorough, that are like phonemically identical, but for the stress. And then you can clue them in a silly way. So this is thorough being thorough, right? All that's changed is which syllable has the stress. And that's another one where it would be really fun to sit around and brainstorm other examples of that. It's also quite useful to write a 4-line program that just spits out a list of really cool things. It's also really fun to do things you think an AI couldn't. So two friends of mine, Adam Wagner and Brooke Usich, had this cool theme. Answers in the grid were things like crapshoot, but rather than clue crapshoot, definitionally, the clue was drat/drat, because both crap and shoot are synonyms for drat. I think another one of them
Nice.
was rib roast, right? Which, of course, we're not thinking of as the dish, we're thinking of as joke, or tease, which is rib, and
Hmm.
roast, which is also tease, right? So they're two synonyms. And semantic search, like that kind of play, AI can't do it yet, and I'm not sort of convinced it will be able to anytime soon. That
Really?
is a theme by two extremely computationally minded people. They're both mathy, they both know how to program. What they wanted to do was just text each other, what are some synonyms we can come up with, back and forth until they came up with this idea. So there are lots of frontiers where AI is not quite good at. You mentioned clues. I don't actually know of people who use it for clues yet. Clue writing is one of my favorite parts, and so I'm a writer as well. Outside of crosswords, I write words that only go across, and so I really, really, really enjoy that process. And that's the kind of thing where, I mean, frankly, the same way I enjoy reading a long book, I wouldn't want to outsource the process, even if the outcome was good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I won't.
You're just hitting on so many of these areas that linguists really love, like ambiguity and wordplay. You know, the way that we don't use language as just simply a way of requesting information or giving information. We use it as a way of showing status or as a way of building community. Crosswords do this and language does this, and I'm here for all of it. On that note, then, let me get into the social aspect. I got to ask you about Wordle.
Yeah.
When Wordle became a thing, what reactions did you notice from the cross world? Was there resentment, or was it like, hey, a great new way to play, or what were you hearing?
It was extremely both of those. So I think the crossword community is pretty warm, if I can paint with a broad brush. But it's absolutely the case that you'll have naysayers who are like, Wordle's too easy. And frankly, right now, Wordle might be a little too easy after, a couple years of guessing five-letter words. Just the same, you had so many people who were like, one, this is amazing. People who never did word games, not only are they doing a word game, they're doing it every day and they're texting their grids to everyone. I mean, a lot has been written about how the main innovation in Wordle, right? This is an old game. The main innovation is that narrative of green and white, sorry, green and gray and yellow that you text to your aunt, who you otherwise don't say much to.
I'm always trying to beat my mom every single morning. We're
Yeah,
trading them. Yep.
it's extremely, it brings people closer in that way. It's a friendly bit of competition. It's ritualized to do it every single day. And in that sense, I think the crossword world was delighted. And in fact, I think happily, it hasn't just been Wordle. There's now the Times has expanded its games, and all of these newspapers are seeing, sometimes with that capitalist glint in their eye, of course, that word games can be not just fun, but habituating and engrossing and bring people to a site they may otherwise not have been to, keep them there, get them to read a thing. So it's a really funny double-edged sword because I'm personally thrilled that more people are doing word games than ever before. Of course, COVID had a big part to play there. We were all stuck at home. I think especially the crossword gave us a way to complete a task that kind of demanded intellectual labor every single day, and give us that sensation of forward progress when we were literally stuck at home. And I think that Wordle and all these other games are, yeah, introducing a just wider swath of word lovers to the pleasures and the social aspects of word games.
Well, that's something that I get from the book is that in the 1980s was this thing that nobody thought was going to be big. Everyone poo-pooed it, and yet it became massive, and it's only become bigger in the years since, in the decades, in the past century. And now technology has a way of spreading crosswords even more than before. There's even more available. And all of these like the human aspect of completing a crossword and sharing it with a friend, you know, we're still doing that. It's almost like we haven't changed. Humans are still humaning, I think. Do you find that this tells us anything about ourselves, that we're still willing more than ever to spend time and money on word games? Or maybe there's no big point to be made. Maybe it's just supposed to be fun and I'm thinking too hard about it. What do you reckon?
I think you can't think too hard about it. I think thinking too hard is always is welcome. I think that there's a lot of people in the book who would say something like, uh, just it's just a game and just having fun. And that's a politics in itself, right? The idea that, I mean, especially in COVID, it wasn't just that we were alone, it was that we were sacrificing ourselves at the altar of productivity and for the first time realizing that our jobs were jobs and, maybe didn't love us back as much. And so to
Oh,
do something fun and share it with people kind of felt like it was less diverting, taking us away from something, and more just, yeah, part of our beings as social creatures, kind of like you're saying. Humans are going to human, and that's a lot of the time going to be seeking pleasure and seeking community. And word games have shown us that that can be more of a part of our life than maybe we had previously thought. I think that it's not really a coincidence that the big, big, big moments of crossword upsurges occur during crisis. So the puzzle is invented after World War One. America has just come back from its kind of coming of age abroad from fighting, and because of the industrialization of the war, you get this for the first time firm separation between work and leisure. Leisure as a concept is a post World War One concept, and so a lot of America at the time is doing kooky competitive stuff. They're seeing who could sit on top of a flagpole for longest. They're seeing who can twirl a hula hoop for longest. They're seeing, uh, who beauty pageants are invented at this time. America is playing kind of for the first time, but also it's playing in this rough-edged, competitive, and yet goofy way, right? It's kind of doing war, but at home. It's playing at it. And the New York Times in this whole era is kind of thumbing its nose at crosswords. Comics and puzzles are unserious, it says. It thinks America's literally gone mad. It's got a big piece in 1925 called A Familiar Form of Madness. It's like last year we were doing Mahjong. This year the kids are doing crosswords. What's next? And it takes World War II for the Times to give in. So it's Margaret Farrar after Pearl Harbor who writes to the Times and says, "I think we're going to need a distraction." There's blackout hours. It's a again unprecedented moment for that generation. And the Times finally in 42 adopts a crossword. And again, it isn't a coincidence, I think, that during COVID, this very natural human need to play and connect to others is so, so, so underscored when all of that connection is made so difficult because we're at home, because we're a little unmoored in time and place.
I really enjoyed reading about the personalities involved. There were some familiar names. Will Shortz, of course, who I was aware of because as a teen, I was an avid reader of Games magazine in the early 80s. That was so I recognized him. I recognized some other names. Did you get a sense that you were really chronicling history, or what was the feeling that you got while you were writing them?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the crossword is really nice to write about something that's got a tight century, right? It's just the last 100 years, and so I really did. I would just say, from a personal point of view, thrill to the history sections more than I think I thought I was going to.
Hmm.
Um, Part of that is just the trickiness of the like auto ethnography of I'm writing about my friends. I was Will Shortz's intern
Hmm.
when I was a kid and have submitted puzzles to the Times ever since. I write about constructors who are also close friends. And that's tricky. That I think took a long time to figure out how to be honest, be sort of researchy without being, without overstepping. But the history I really did love. And it just felt like crosswords in this Forrest Gump way were around at these really important moments of history that I didn't know about. Simon and Schuster's first book was a crossword puzzle book. That year, 3 of the top 10 bestsellers were their puzzle books. Random House kind of owes its existence to crosswords because when Schuster left Bonai and Liveright, this old publishing house, to start Simon and Schuster, his replacement was Bennett Cerf, an old high school and college friend. Margaret um, took her royalties from the first ever crossword puzzle book, that book in 1924 by Simon and Schuster, and had it invested in U.S. Steel and Standard Oil. And so, thanks to the behemoths of the day, she was able to reinvest her dividends in her husband's publishing house, and eventually Farrar Straus Giroux, a big publisher in New York, would have crossword puzzle books to thank for its existence. So I really, really did love the history. It taught me so much. It taught me about how newspapers were made, that like a mobile game could exist because of new printing technology. And it's almost always a story of a new technological affordance creating a form, right? And so being able to ink the grid on the newspaper is why we have crosswords. And yeah, I really, really enjoyed the history, I think most of all.
And the future, are we there? Is it AI computer tools helping humans? We're never going to lose the human, I don't think.
I think we're in an interesting phase right now because we're in a kind of second crossword craze. So there was that
Hmm.
moment in the 20s that you're talking about where people are wearing crossword print outfits and going to crossword balls, and tournaments are making a name for themselves, and all this fun cultural vibrancy. I think now, dozens of newspapers are adding crosswords. They're adding word games. The phone has been our new portal to word games, and so we're in a new mode of loving word games, doing them all the time. And there's a bit of competition among all of these new outlets. And I think that people who come up with games that are really, really, really kind of handmade and curated still have an edge. It's pretty easy to computer generate a Sudoku. It's pretty hard to computer generate a really good, let's say, connections, as the Times has.
Hmm.
And so I do think we're in an age where, at least I guess I'm hopeful that the future will continue to be really good games made by people. I can happily report I don't think AI is quite coming for our jobs just yet, but that could change. Things change by the month in this era.
But it is very interesting to see new games being invented. It's good to see those innovations. Like on our Discord channel, we're big fans of lots of different games. We're big Rattle fans. We're big
Yeah,
Jiznep fans. But I feel like the crossword is going to be the sort of the anchor store, the one holding it together. Feels that way.
I think so. I think it's very capacious. It unites wordplay, cultural reference, plus mathematics of how letters go together, that scavenger hunt feel of a good theme. It's got so much to it that I think you're right. It's got a heavy gravitational pull, and I think it will continue to.
The book is Across the Universe, the Past, Present, and Future of the Crossword Puzzle. It's available from Pantheon Books, and I'm talking to the author, Natan Last. Natan, how can people get a hold of you or find out what you're doing?
Yeah, my website is natanlast.com, and you can find me on social media at Natan Last.
Well, thanks for hanging out. This has been a really good chat.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure.